Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The Constitutional Tribunal has ruled that the provision of law allowing the Human Rights Ombudsman to remain in his position after the expiry of his term of office is inconsistent with the Constitution. The provision becomes invalid 3 months after the ruling is published in the Journal of Laws.
The case examined the constitutionality of the Ombudsman continuing to exercise his functions after the expiry of his term of office, which is enshrined in the Constitution and lasts 5 years. Bodnar's term of office expired on September 9th last year. However, he still fulfills the Ombudsman's role because since September, the Sejm and Senate have not been able to agree on his successor. Under Article 3, Section 6 of the Act on the Ombudsman, the current Ombudsman shall perform his duties until a new one takes up his position. This provision, under which Adam Bodnar continues to act as the Ombudsman, is what the Law and Justice deputies are challenging. The Constitutional Tribunal found that Article 3, Section 6 of the Act on the Human Rights Defender is inconsistent with the Constitution. Until now, this provision has allowed Adam Bodnar to continue to perform his function. The verdict will come into force 3 months after his announcement. It is time for Parliament to adjust to the court's ruling.
Jest to czas dla Parlamentu.
If Parliament fails to elect an ombudsman, the amended law will enter into force. Passing the new law will lead to the introduction of someone who will be something of a commissar. Supporters of Adam Bodnar from the Committee for the Defense of Democracy and Citizens of the Republic of Poland and MPs from the opposition gathered in front of the tribunal. The funniest thing is that the opposition MP is shouting the loudest and disrupting our press conference. First, they take the ombudsman's position, then they will come for civil rights. The protesters refuse to talk to us. Why are you protesting? No thanks. We'll talk when you switch stations because I can see through you.
Chętnie porozmawiam, bo dobrze z oczu panu patrzę. Z tą stacją nie rozmawiam.
Today's ruling arouses many strong emotions. Law and justice officials fulfilled Jarosław Kaczyński's political agenda. This is a blow to the very heart of Polish democracy. Adam Bodnar was disposed of and the door was opened so that, despite the Senate's objection, he would appoint an ombudsman, of course with an appropriate party ID. I think this is a significant ruling. It's very important for the functioning of the ombudsman because we have a stalemate today. In this position, we have an exceptionally ideologically leftist person. We have to cut it as quickly as possible. In the justification of the judgment, the Constitution stated that the legislature set the ombudsman's term for 5 years, which means that it should not have lasted as long as it did. The decision of the Constitutional Tribunal was published today in the Journal of Laws.
The Parliamentary Committee on Justice and Human Rights gave a positive opinion on the nomination of Law and Justice MEP Bartłomiej Wróblewski as Ombudsman. The candidates of the Civic Coalition and the Polish People's Party, Professor Sławomir Paciera and Lewica Piotr Ikonowicz, did not win the support of a majority of members.
Bardzo kompetentny, uczciwy.
A very competent, honest, principled person who has his own values, which he described, and who turns his words into deeds. He helps people, helps the weakest, people with disabilities. He does it as an MEP, as a human being, and I am sure he will do it as an ombudsman. And I hope and deeply believe that the Sejm will accept. But also in the Senate, there will be a reflection that party affiliation is not the most important thing.
Taka przynależność partyjna nie jest najważniejsza.
Jeżeli chodzi o kandydaturę pana posła Wróblewskiego.
As far as the candidacy of MEP Wróblewski is concerned, we have a consensus that we will not support the candidacy. As for Professor Paciera, we will rather unanimously support his candidacy. As for Piotr Ikonowicz, our voices will be varied, but I will leave it for the evening to be a surprise.
Będą zróżnicowane, ale pozostawiam to już na wieczór, żeby była jakaś niespodzianka.
Tu jest jeden wielki problem i
There is one big problem and contradiction. This ruling is ordered for the political dictatorship from Nogorodska Street. I'm not going to decide today what the Law and Justice Party will present in the parliament today, but it will clearly not be in accordance with the Constitution. The Constitution does not provide for an acting ombudsman to be elected in a formula other than the constitutional one.
The United States has imposed further sanctions on Russia. The reason for this is the interference of Russian security services in the United States presidential elections and the cyber attacks against public institutions.
Washington banned U.S. financial institutions from trading in Russian bonds and imposed sanctions on 6 companies supposedly cooperating with Russian security services to carry out cyber attacks. The US also imposed personal sanctions on 32 people who were allegedly involved in attempts to interfere with the course of last year's presidential elections. The White House also announced expulsion of 10 Russian diplomats suspected of espionage. In a statement issued after the announcement of this decision, Washington stressed that it was ready to warm its relations with Russia, but would firmly defend American national interests and burden the Kremlin with the cost of destabilizing actions, including cases of violations by Russia of the territorial integrity of other states.
Polish deputies in the lower house of parliament discussed the third wave of the coronavirus epidemic today. Information on the current state of the fight against coronavirus was presented by Minister of Health Adam Bodnar.
We see some slight symptoms of reduced hospitalization because in the last 2 days, the number of discharges was more significant than the number of admissions for 2 consecutive days this week, which is very important. We recorded a negative hospitalization balance, and perhaps this is a signal that this wave, or rather this apogee, is taking place in the hospital system right now. But what does this mean? It means tremendous staff fatigue. It also means an enormous strain on the hospital infrastructure to handle the third wave in hospitals. For example, we need twice as much liquid oxygen a day to treat patients. In the meantime, we improve oxygen systems in hospitals. There are more possibilities to use this high-flow therapy, which is possible with oxygen beds. And the result was a 2-fold increase in oxygen consumption.
And now the coronavirus report. In the last 24 hours in Poland, over 91,000 tests for coronavirus were performed and 21,130 new cases of infection were diagnosed. A further 682 people died.
Since the beginning of the epidemic in Poland, 2,642,242 people have contracted the coronavirus. In total, more than 60,000 people have already died as a result of COVID-19. The national vaccination program is accelerating. Today, the first drive-through points were open. Nearly 244,000 vaccines were administered in the last 24 hours. The total number of vaccinations administered now exceeds 8,223,000. More than 6 million people have received the first dose, and the second dose, 2,190,000.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programs. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.